Servus, welcome, Ahlan was Dahlan, to our today's webinar with the title Cybersecurity, a Perspective from the Middle East. My name is Herwig Neuper. I am the WKO Wirtschaftsdelegierte Commercial Counselor for Jordan, based in Amman, and I'm responsible for the countries Jordan, Iraq, Lebanon, and Syria, and I have the pleasure to guide you today through this webinar. The webinar will last about approximately 1 hour and will be recorded and then made available on our YouTube channel later this week. To give as many participants as possible the chance to join us and benefit from the webinar, we decided to conduct the whole session in English. Questions can be raised during the webinar by using the option in the chat. If there is enough time, we will try to answer them in a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, or in case we significantly exceed the time limit or the questions are too specific or too detailed for a general audience, we will reliably collect them and answer them individually by the respective speakers after the webinar. So why did we choose the topic for our webinar? I think we all feel that almost not a day goes by that we are not confronted with reports of cyber attacks, be it in the media that we consume, or maybe we are even affected ourselves. I'm sure most of today's participants know exactly what the definition of cybersecurity means, namely the application of technologies, processes, and controls to protect systems, networks, programs, devices, and data from cyber attacks. It aims to reduce the risk of cyber attacks and protect against the unauthorized exploitation of systems, networks, and technologies. Cyber attacks can hit anyone and know no national borders. Thus, the country of the Middle East, their institutions and companies are just as affected as countries in Europe and North America. That's why we want to take this webinar as an opportunity to use examples from 3 countries, namely Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, to show what the specific challenges are, what the legal framework looks like, and last but not least, where there are opportunities for solution providers from Austria. Besides the 3 countries mentioned, we would also like to look at the situation in Austria as well. Before we really get started, I would like to briefly mention the names of our today's speakers and cybersecurity experts, all of whom I would like to warmly welcome and thank them for taking the time to share their country-specific expertise in the cybersecurity area with us today. We have Verena Becker from the Austrian Federal Economic Chamber, Tarek Bachoun from Scanwave in Jordan, my colleague Christoph Pfeiffer, Commercial Counselor in Saudi Arabia, Andreas Pfleger, my colleague in the UAE, and Mohammed Amin Belarbi from Project Cypher League in the UAE. So now it's time to give the digital floor for the lady in our round, Verena Becker, cybersecurity expert at the Federal Economic Chamber and President of Women for Cyber Austria. Verena, please go ahead.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. Thank you, Herwig, and thank you all for the opportunity to speak about this relevant topic. First, I want to give you a short overview of the situation worldwide. Then we will come to the European Union and then to Austria. Afterwards, I will tell you what the Austrian Economic Chamber does to help their members improve cybersecurity. And at the end, I will switch to a related topic, why it is a win-win situation to empower women to work in cybersecurity. The global view. On behalf of cyber attacks, we look at really alarming figures with a significant increase in the last years and worrying predictions. 1 in 4 big companies have suffered a data breach that cost them $1 million or more. Only 14% report that they have no data breaches. But very often it is true that they simply don't know about it because they are very often only detected by chance. Cybersecurity in the European Union, well, the situation is similar in Europe, which leads to a revision of the Cybersecurity Directive called NIS2. Starting with September 2024, medium and large entities across certain sectors such like transport, energy, health, digital infrastructure will have to implement risk management measures and will have reporting obligations for cyber incidents. The situation in Austria is similar as well. If you ask Austrian companies about the greatest digital risks for their businesses, the greatest threat is cybercrime. They even feel significantly less at risk from competition. 2 of 3 enterprises in Austria were victims of a cyber attack during the last 12 months. But the problems with all these figures is that we're really getting used to it. The tricks of the criminals are getting more and more sophisticated. When they get stuck with well-developed software systems with firewalls and virus scanners, they try to trick the users into installing malware or handing over the passwords. It is very important to acknowledge that everybody of us can be a victim. Last week, a friend of mine called me because she was a victim of what's called the Hi Mom scam. It started with a WhatsApp message, with a fake WhatsApp message of her daughter who studies in Hungary, and at last ended with my friend transferring about $3,000 to criminals in Lithuania. So why do I tell you this? Because the pattern is very typical, and it is very important to accept that cybercrime is not virtual. Of course, for the attackers it is, but for us, the potential victims, it is a very real danger in our lives. The criminals attack enterprises of all branches and sizes, as well as hospitals, university, and also private persons. So it is important to recognize that the criminals, their only interest is the money, and they make no difference where they can get it from. So this is why cybersecurity has to be a top priority and must be carried by the management in the company directly to all employees. Of course, for us at the Austrian Economic Chamber, it is also a major concern to support our members to become more secure. The services of the Austrian Federal Economic Chamber. Well, the main platform is our website, www.it-safe.at. There you get information for webinars and events like this. You get online advisories. You get manuals for enterprises and employees, as well as you can find an IT security expert if you haven't got one at the moment. Of course, we know that the financial resources are always limited, and therefore it's also important that you use fundings if they are possible, and we have an overview of actual funding possibilities. What can you do if it's too late for prevention? Well, go to your expert is the first advice, but if you haven't got one and you need immediate help, please call our cybersecurity hotline. Austrian companies will receive emergency help by telephone all around the clock and free of charge. Well, cybersecurity is very important, we know that, but why don't we accept it and do our homework? Well, it's always about the people. So we know that one of the greatest barriers to meet security needs is the people. So you really have to raise awareness, you have to educate staff in your organizations, and of course you need cybersecurity specialists to deal with the attack and risks. The skills shortage in cybersecurity is an enormous global problem. The workforce gap, number one barrier to meeting organization security needs, the number one barrier to meeting the organization security needs is the workforce gap. But at the same time, we know that only 11% women is the cybersecurity workforce in Europe. Globally seen, it's about 14 or 15%, so it's a little bit better, especially in North America. This was the reason why Women for Cyber was founded. Women for Cyber is a European non-profit foundation, and its aim is to promote, encourage, and support women in the field of cybersecurity. At the moment, we have 15 chapters in all over Europe, and I'm really very proud that the newest chapter is the Austrian chapter. We had our kickoff 2 weeks ago in Vienna. You can see the photo with the board and our panel discussion. We had 150 people there, 1/3 is men, and I'm very proud of this because it really shows that the message, that is really the message that cybersecurity and the gender-inclusive cybersecurity society is very important, and that it is a win-win situation for men and women to empower women in this field. So we are doing workshops, we are doing meetings, and at the moment we are preparing a mentee program, and we are looking for male and female mentors to support women in cybersecurity. If you're interested to be a part of the gender-inclusive cybersecurity, please join us on LinkedIn or contact me directly. So thank you very much. And if you have any question, please feel free to contact me.
Thank you very much, Verena. This was really interesting. Congratulations also to the Women for Cyber Austria chapter. I think this is really, really a great thing, and all the best for the future. And now I would like to put the spotlight on Jordan and kindly ask Tarek Bachoun from Scanwave, our Jordanian expert, to give us an insight about the situation in Jordan. Please, Tarek, go ahead.
Thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Tarek Bachoun. I'm the General Manager and co-founder of Scanwave, cybersecurity and governance and technology governance consulting company. I will be covering the following topics. We're going to give a brief definition of what cybersecurity and cyber attacks is, threat landscape, challenges, opportunities, and cybersecurity resilience program. So, as was covered earlier, the cybersecurity is the combination of people, processes, and technologies, and people is the most vulnerable of them all regarding the cybersecurity. These three together are used to build controls and procedures for the protection of cybersecurity networks, servers, systems, applications, all the components to protect them from any cyber attack or cyber threat that might emerge or become a cyber attack. Cybersecurity is based on best practices, good practices. It depends on the framework or the standard that we are using or any organization is using to protect its information at that time. And cyber attacks are aimed at accessing, stealing, destroying, or altering sensitive personal or financial information and to disrupt the workflow of organizations and economies. Cybersecurity is guided by what we call the CIA triad, which is the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. It's not the same as the CIA that we all know, but it's the same. It has the same name. So we'll go to the threat landscape, and cyber threats have evolved with every day, every time. Every new gadget is out in the market. Cybersecurity is evolving as well as cyber threats, and leading to cyber attacks. Also, these attacks are growing more sophisticated. They are using complex and variety of tactics in order to gain access to systems like ransomware, brute force attacks, phishing attacks. It might be 2 or more of these attacks together in order to gain access to steal information. And at the end of the day, it's either disrupting the economies or organizations or stealing money. And no organization is safe from any cyber threat. It's global, everywhere, and the attack surface is growing each day. So I'm going to talk about some challenges that are facing the Jordan private and public sector. Recently, in the past few years, and especially during the Corona pandemic, there was an increase in the usage and migration to the cloud services. And that is very evident was in Jordan, both sectors and in the world. Along with that, the cyber attacks have been evolving every day and becoming complex and much more harder to mitigate than the traditional setup that was used in the organization. So professionals need to take up to the speed in order to challenge and face these cyber threats and attacks. There's also one of the challenges is also lack of specialized majors and programs in the university and colleges in Jordan, which poses a big challenge and has to be addressed. And these programs shall be up to date with the latest technologies because cyber threats are evolving within the hour. Cybersecurity comes at a high price, and this is especially an obstacle for small and medium enterprises because they might not have the funding to do the full cybersecurity, let's say, program in order to protect themselves and protect their information and data from any cyber attacks or espionage. Awareness and knowledge of the concept of the cybersecurity is another challenge that we have to come as organizations. Organizations currently adopt the minimum level of cybersecurity in order to comply with the regulatory mandates. So, since we talk about the migration to the cloud and the adoption of the cloud services like the SaaS and PaaS and others, there's also the digital transformation that the public and private sector are implementing. And this is an integral part to attract foreign investments to the country. And also it is an indication of the maturity level or high maturity level of the cybersecurity posture in Jordan. Secure environment is also one of the main drivers for the enhancements of economic development, thus imposing the opportunities for increasing the business and investment in this industry. Recently, Jordan has launched the National Cybersecurity Center to protect official institutions and economic sectors, which highlights the importance and readiness of the infrastructure in Jordan, leading to a higher maturity level in cybersecurity and digital transformation. So, how do we protect ourselves? What's the next step? It's a resilience program, a cybersecurity resilience program, and it's all depends on international standards and frameworks. For example, the ISO 27001, 27002, NIST, CIS, the PCI, SAMS, COBIT, etc. These programs should be tailor-made and for each organization to be developed based on the security needs and the infrastructure and security components that each organization have in order to protect in order to protect the components that store, process, and transmit critical data and information. Thank you very much. And back to Herbert, I guess. And I think the QA will be at the end of this session.
Thank you so much, Tarek. Next, I would like to go to Saudi Arabia and kindly ask my dear colleague Christoph Pfeiffer in Riyadh to give us a feeling what is pressing in Saudi Arabia these days when it comes to cybersecurity.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, Herwig. Good morning from Riyadh. My name is Christoph Pfeiffer. I'm the commercial counselor here in Saudi Arabia. And aside from Saudi Arabia, I'm also covering the Yemeni market. Yeah, just before we go into the topic of cybersecurity, a brief info on our office, so to say, the Austrian economy and bilateral trade, to have a bit of perspective. Annually, there are more than 400 Austrian companies that do regular business activities with Saudi Arabia. 30 of these Austrian companies also have a physical presence here, and we see that in 3 parts of the country. In the western part, in Jeddah, then in the eastern part, mostly in Dammam, and their business is focused with Aramco and Sabic, with these 2 large companies, and then in central Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh, which is an ever-growing location for business. Last year, Saudi Arabia was the 14th largest export market for Austria, and the first half of this year it was already 41st ranking. And the first half of this year, Austrian exports to Saudi Arabia grew by 55.6%. So it's a very positive outlook. Also, the estimated GDP growth for this year with 8.9% is actually one of the highest worldwide, I think. So you see there is a lot of dynamics in Saudi Arabia, and lot of development going on. Now let's talk a bit about the cybersecurity landscape, or the history, or the journey, so to say, of cybersecurity institutions in Saudi Arabia. Basically, a starting point is 2006 with the Saudi CERT. So that is the National Center for Cybersecurity Awareness. And these days, actually, it's already part of the National Cybersecurity Authority, which was established in 2017 within the National Cybersecurity Strategy in Saudi Arabia. In 2008, the Center of Excellence for Information Assurance was set up, and this is part of the King Saud University, so it's an educational focus. And another institution with educational and training focus is the Saudi Federation for Cybersecurity, Programming and Drones, that was set up in 2017. And aside from generating this general awareness, which we have heard in the beginning, that is very important in cybersecurity field, it also aims to, or it targets young people, young Saudis, to become experts in cybersecurity and cybersecurity risk mitigation. So it's a training and education focus of that organization. Yeah, and then aside from the National Cybersecurity Authority, where actually since 2017 all these efforts are centralized, and it has the national mandate for cybersecurity risk mitigation. In 2019, the SDAIA, the Saudi Data and Artificial Intelligence Authority, was set up. The current situation in Saudi Arabia for the next few years, or from 2020 to 2026, a growth of over 12% in the cybersecurity market is expected, and already for next year the market size is estimated to be around $5.6 billion. Saudi Arabia is among the top 10 most affected countries when it comes to cyber attacks. And we see also on the right side the first figure, the 160,000. That's actually the number of daily attacks on either Saudi companies in the private sector or organizations or government authorities from the public sector. Yeah, I mean, with that, we also have to say that in Saudi Arabia, actually 88% of organizations reported to have been victim of a ransomware attack. So if you remember the statistics in the beginning, in Austria, I think it was 8%, and also if you compare that globally, 88% is actually quite a high figure. So there is definitely a lot going on when it comes to cyber attacks in Saudi Arabia. The estimated loss per cyber attack is 6.5 million US dollars, so it's quite significant. And due to this, what seems to be a high risk landscape, 45% of companies have already implemented advanced security measures. And at this stage, also 48% of companies are in the progress of implementing advanced security measures. Last month in Riyadh, two very large cybersecurity events took place. This Global Cybersecurity Forum and the Black Hat Forum. So we see also here an uptick of conferences and information events in the recent years when it comes to cybersecurity. The next slide is on the Vision 2030 of Saudi Arabia. Don't worry, I don't go into too much detail on the vision, and I guess also what most people think about when they hear Vision 2030 Saudi Arabia, they think about NEOM and the Line and all these mega and giga projects in the country. But actually, cybersecurity is also a huge and important pillar in this Vision 2030, because one part of the Vision 2030 is also the digitalization of the country, of the economy, of the government. Also, digital healthcare is a huge topic, and with that, of course, you expand also the so to say, area of targeting or area of risk, and with that you need a very good cybersecurity awareness and defense. National cybersecurity strategy was set up in 2017. With that, this National Cybersecurity Agency was generated, which centralizes, so to say, all the full mandate for cybersecurity in Saudi Arabia. And the main goal, so to say, is to build up and maintain a minimum standard of cybersecurity for national institutions and for state and government agencies. And the investment in that field in 2020 was around 425 million US dollars. With that also comes the essential cybersecurity controls, the ECC, which basically focus on five fields in cybersecurity. One is the governance. The other one is cybersecurity defense, then resilience. We also heard already from our previous speaker about resilience in cybersecurity, and then third-party service providers, cloud computing, so cybersecurity in that field, and also cybersecurity for industrial control systems. The National Academy for Cybersecurity, that's actually an initiative from the Ministry of Communication and Information Technology in cooperation with Human Resource Development Fund. Here again, it's about awareness building and also building up, so to say, digital competence. It's not exclusively focused on cybersecurity, but it's focused on education in data analysis, AI data, cloud computing, web and app development, game design and development, and always keeping in mind how to keep these applications or the data safe, and how to implement cybersecurity measures. The Haseen initiative focuses on improving cybersecurity on the national level, and here basically it focuses on email communication security, basically protection from spoofing and unauthorized utilization. So again, awareness building and training is an important part here, sensitizing the national authorities and their employees towards the importance of domain names, and then especially here the activation of domain names, documentation behind that, and also focusing and investigating the registries of such domain names. The next slide shows just a bit this gigantic leap forward from Saudi Arabia, if you want to call it that way, with the global cybersecurity index, which is a benchmark for engagement of countries when it comes to the topic of cybersecurity. In 2017, Saudi Arabia was ranked 46. And then 1 year later, in 2018, it was already ranked 13th. So there was a huge move forward when it came to cybersecurity. And the recent index from 2020, Saudi Arabia is already ranked number 2, together with UK, but still it's a huge improvement, and quite an impressive journey what the country undertook here. Now, let me just mention a few upcoming events. The first event, Austria Showcase Cybersecurity, 28th of January until 1st of February, together with Herwig and his colleagues in Amman. So it will be 2 days in Amman and 2 days in Riyadh for that event. Then in February, we have two exhibitions where we have a small Austria Pavilion group exhibition, catalog exhibition. One is the LEAP 2023. That is a technology innovation startup, big startup exhibition conference. And the Saudi Big Five is more focused on construction. And in March, mid-March, basically, we will have a trade mission to Saudi Arabia, to both cities, Riyadh and Jeddah. And this one is sector agnostic, so it's not exclusively focused on cybersecurity, but of course also with cybersecurity IT software being part of this trade mission. And with that, I have reached already the end of my presentation, and I would like to hand back to Herwig.
Thank you so much, Christoph, for your very, very interesting insights into Saudi Arabia. So we come to our last guest in this webinar, and we go to the UAE, to my colleague Andreas Pfleger and his cybersecurity expert Mohammed Belarbi. Andreas, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you so much, Herwig. I hope you can hear me. Good morning to our participants in Austria. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today. I have to begin with an admission. I am by far no cybersecurity expert, which is why I invited an excellent young man, Mohammed Amin Belarbi, who's the founder of not only one, but two cybersecurity companies. And he will share his vast insight and his excellent understanding of the UAE landscape with you in just a few moments. Before beginning, I just want to point out how unique the United Arab Emirates are. As the world changes, as we recover from COVID and face new realities, especially in the dimensions of energy supply on a global basis, the UAE has managed to benefit from essentially all changes as they occurred. If I look at my notes, I can see that the UAE economy in 2021 grew by more than 4%, and by 2022 grew by more than 6%. So the trend is clear. Growth is the way to go for the UAE. This trend is underlined by a recent poll amongst the Austrian companies that do business in the UAE. 80% of these Austrian companies saw improvements and saw growth in their revenues in the last 12 months. The same 80% or another 80% see the next 12 months in a similar light and expect further growth in their revenues. So again, the direction is very clear. Growth is the way to go. More than 50% of the Austrian companies in the UAE also plan to increase or expand their investment in the UAE. The Austrian companies and the economy in the UAE in general is diversified. Most of you probably know the UAE as heavily reliant on oil, on the oil sector, which is still a reality, but diversification is a national priority, is a government priority, and this is continuing at a very high speed. This means, of course, that the topic of cybersecurity and cyber safety will only become more important with each passing day. No matter whether you are dealing in food production machinery, whether you offer digital services or digital products, or you build steel plants or steel manufacturing facilities, cybersecurity and cybersecurity topics are absolutely important and will only continue to grow in importance. With that being said, the UAE celebrated its 51st birthday just 4 days ago. This nation is 51 years old. A lot has happened in these 51 years, and even more will happen in the next 5, 10, and 50 years. With that being said, I would like to now invite Mohammed Amin Belarbi, who I already mentioned is the founder of not only one, but 2 cybersecurity companies. Mohammed, thank you so much for agreeing to join our webinar today. The stage is yours, and I look forward to your insights.
Thank you very much, Andreas, and thank you for having me today for this webinar. Let me quickly start by introducing myself. My name is Mohammed Amin Belarbi. As Andreas said, I'm the founder of 2 cybersecurity companies, one in the consulting space and the cybersecurity software platform. We started actually as hackers for hire, as the topic was gaining a lot of notoriety in the UAE. So we worked with government clients like the Dubai government and the Ras Al Khaimah government, all the way to technology giants such as Careem and Aramex and Souk.com, culminating ultimately in 2017 with us being on the cover of Forbes in recognition of our work. And the context of the UAE is very, very interesting because one of the requirements for hackers generally before targeting an institution or an organization is for that entity to have a digital infrastructure to exploit, right? If a company doesn't have a network or an app or a website, there is not much you can work with. And with the case of the UAE, it has one of the largest digital footprints in the world. It's actually #1 in MENA in terms of digital transformation index and 5th globally. And that's mostly because of the push at a government level to digitize the economy, to foster e-government services, to ensure that the UAE is at the forefront of digital service provision. And that means that, well, the UAE became a prime target for hackers because banks, government entities, private and public companies all had transformed into digitally enabled institutions that moved a lot of their processes and workflows online. And that was further exacerbated by, as you all know, the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic back in 2020. And that meant that a lot of companies had to shift. A lot of them had to shift to remote work. So their employees had to set up environments, virtual environments back in their houses as opposed to being in the office. A lot of people were panicking because of the lack or information about the coronavirus. And that means that a lot of hackers found this to be a great target, not only to leverage that panic, but also to leverage that extended digital transformation. And it's not only at an institutional level that the UAE is so well connected, it's also on an individual level. One of the highest social media usages in the world is in the UAE. In fact, we're #1 in terms of usage of social media. We're 2nd in terms of internet usage, and #1 in terms of mobile internet speed. And that gives you a bit of a perspective of how digital the UAE has kind of gone over the past few years. And as a result, as I said, hackers found this to be a great target. And that led to some significant cyber attacks over the past few years, targeting the region, but also the UAE specifically. In a recent survey, actually 59% of UAE organizations said that they were hit by ransomware in 2021, which is up 38% from 2020. So that's quite a significant number. We're talking about almost 60% of all organizations were targeted by a ransomware. And the average cost normally of a successful ransomware attack in 2021 for a UAE organization was up to $1.26 million, which states kind of like the extent of the damages that these sorts of cyber attacks can lead for organizations that are operating. Some of these organizations have quite critical processes online. We're talking about oil pipelines or industrial control systems in power plants, which means that the impact sometimes is not only financial, but can have significant impact on the everyday individuals, from oil not being delivered at petrol stations to electricity blackouts and so on. And also people themselves, not only organizations, but people themselves do fall victim to various types of frauds and phishing attacks. And the cost for the UAE this year has been over $746 million. And we're talking only for individuals. These are people that would send money to a fraudulent account. These are people that whose files and phones were locked or encrypted, and they had to pay a ransom. So individuals as well as entities and companies are suffering from the impact of cyber attacks. And finally, in terms of, we're talking about like the industrial level, which is, I think, the highest risk in terms of cyber attacks. Almost 38% of industrial computers in the UAE were targeted in 2022 by ransomwares and cyber attacks. So that kind of gives you a bit of the alarming state at which we are in terms of cyber risk, because it does affect a critical infrastructure in the UAE. And the other issue, which is the other kind of like side of the coin, is that a lot of companies and individuals are paying ransoms. In fact, 84% of UAE companies have paid the ransom in these sorts of attacks, which is more than 20% higher than the global average. And this also is one of the reasons that hackers are so focused on this region, because of the success rate of ransom payments. In countries or in places where hackers do not get the ransom paid, they are discouraged because they know that if they spend the time and effort to successfully compromise an institution, the chances of that institution paying up is quite small. And we see that a lot in Europe and the US, where government regulation has pushed these entities to not pay ransoms so as not to encourage this criminal enterprise. But in the UAE, it's a bit different. Ransom payments are actually high and higher than the global average. So that leads also to a greater incidence of cyber attacks. And the difference that we're seeing over the past few years is there are two types of threat actors, right? You have the traditional threat actors like using ransomwares like Egregore, Lockbit, Revi, Conti. These are typically cyber threat actors associated with China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. But the difference in this region is that we have the other types of threat actors, which are politically motivated threat actors. These are countries that act on behalf of state sponsors. It could be, especially given the geopolitical landscape in this region. Recently, with the rapprochement between the GCC countries and Israel, there were an increase in cyber attacks. There's always the continuous tensions between the GCC countries and Iran, which also leads to politically motivated attacks. And that's a bit more risky, because those threat actors are financed by countries. So the budgets, the resources, and the people that they have at their disposal are a lot more than a bunch of kids and hackers sitting in a basement, in a sense. And the other thing also that's important to notice is threat actors in terms of complexity are evolving, right? We're no longer talking about individuals just hacking to make a name for themselves. We're talking today about hacker groups that are a lot more sophisticated and operate as an enterprise. Maybe a term that you have heard before, ransomware as a service. This is a type of institutionalized cybercrime that took the industrial processes of software as a service and then applied it to ransomware. So you don't need anymore to build your own ransomware. You don't need to spend hours trying to target an organizations. There are groups that offer you plug and play ransomware solutions, and they don't even ask for payment in advance. They take a cut of the ransom payments that are paid by victim institutions. We see this becoming quite the trend here in the Middle East and also in the UAE, and that makes the barrier to entry for cyber threat actors a lot smaller and a lot easier. So an individual like anyone without, say, you don't even need $100. You go on the dark web, you join one of these forums, you acquire this ransomware as a service pack, and then you can start targeting. And then you start paying these hackers from a portion of the ransomware that you are gaining. And that means that it's becoming harder and harder to deal with these cyber threats. In the case of the UAE, there have been initiatives on a government level that are trying to a bit revolutionize the approach to cybersecurity. It's no longer relying entirely on government internal resources to manage cyber risk. They're actually working alongside a PPE program, so private-public partnerships, where the government is contracting service providers to take over that cybersecurity function. An important player in the space is the UAE Cybersecurity Council, which is headed by Mohammed Hamad Al-Kuwaiti, the head of cybersecurity for the UAE government. The council was created back in November 2020, and it's tasked with developing cybersecurity strategies and building a secure cyber infrastructure by creating both laws and regulations that can help decrease the incidence of cyber attacks, and also building capabilities along private sector operators to fight cyber crimes. Some of the operators that work with the government are CPX, Deloitte, AWS, Huawei, Cisco. So there's a lot of opportunities for private sector operators, not only inside the UAE, but outside the UAE as well, to work in tandem with the government to tackle the growing risk of cyber attacks. On a Dubai level, for example, we see new initiatives by, there is an entity called the Dubai Electronic Security Center, which was launched by Mohammed bin Rashid, the Sheikh of Dubai, to ensure that cybersecurity is tackled at a government level, and it engages private and public institutions in Dubai to come together, share information, share knowledge, and share strategies to tackle cybercrime. The Dubai actually went a step further by creating something called the Dubai Cyber Innovation Park. So this brings together, again, government operators and private sectors to create a local cybersecurity industry and players and foster them so that they can build stronger capabilities locally. And one of the partners for that was Thales Group, which is a French private operator. So again, opportunities for private sector companies from Europe, from abroad, are plenty when it comes to the fight against cybercrime. We see also a lot of the UAE effort on the regulatory standpoint. So regulators like the Abu Dhabi Global Markets or Dubai International Financial Center has been introducing more regulations and laws with regards to data privacy and data protection. A lot of them alongside or in line with GDPR regulations. So companies that are acting in this space, regulatory compliance with cybersecurity, there is a lot to do in the market, because most companies that join ADGM or the IFC, and most notably these are fintech companies, they have to abide by these regulatory requirements, and a lot of them have to contract private operators to meet those regulatory requirements when it comes to digital data privacy and security. In fact, the Dubai Financial Services Authority also launched its own cyber threat intelligence platform, kind of to support the local ecosystem and the regulators to thwart cyber attacks. And we also see major players in the market in the UAE that are kind of growing out of this huge rush for cybersecurity enterprises, notably CPX Cyber Protection, which was launched a year ago or so, that is undertaking a lot of private cybersecurity capabilities on behalf of the government. Similarly with the Edge Group, which is a defense contractor that is working with the government and private sector operators to build cybersecurity solutions and services. Also, cloud operators like G42 or Injazat are enlisting cybersecurity companies locally and abroad to build a stronger industry and stronger local capabilities. And we also see some pushes for the UAE government in the offensive cybersecurity space as well. So it's not only a defensive industry, but also offensive cybersecurity solutions and open source intelligence software and platforms. Most recently, Israel has been at the forefront of pursuing these opportunities in the market, but there is obviously plenty of space for other operators to come in and showcase what their solutions can provide for the UAE government and the UAE private sector companies. The other thing that we see are emerging or as a trend is the increase in demand for cyber insurance policies. So because of the pressure from regulators, because of the pressure from the number of cyber attacks that are taking place in the UAE cyber insurance market is anticipated to grow at around 25.6% between 2023 and 28, which leaves plenty of opportunities for cyber insurance companies and cyber insurance providers from Europe to enter the market and fill that gap and provide some of those policies. That's pretty much like a bit of an overview. Obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. That was really, very interesting and I think also very exciting for those among us who have not such a deep knowledge into cybersecurity. It was really super easy to understand, and thank you so much for that. We would still have time for some question and answers, but right now I don't see any questions asked from the audience. So I think if you still have some questions in mind, you can always send them to us later on. It just remains for me to give you also a quick event preview of relevant events in the new year organized by our colleagues worldwide. As Christoph mentioned already, together with the colleagues in Riyadh, we here in Amman, we organize the Austria Showcase on cybersecurity by the end of January. Please, to the Austrians among us, Austrian companies, please sign up. There's still a few places available. Also, our colleagues in Kenya do a webinar on security technology at the beginning of March. Our colleagues in Finland, they're doing a workshop on cybersecurity. And there is an exhibition, very important exhibition, the ITSA in Nuremberg at the end of October, Europe's leading trade fair for IT security. So we finished, I think, very timely. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. If you have any questions, no matter if it's a specific inquiry or regarding an event, don't hesitate and reach out to us. We will be more than happy to assist you. All the best. See you soon. I wish you already now Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Vielen Dank an alle Teilnehmer. Thank you and Shukran from Amman.